Given the love interest of this book, my snack seems really inappropriate. Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and welcome back to another episode of Spectacular Standalones, a reading vlog where I read an entire book, tell you what I think about it, stop at every chapter, let you know what happened. Today we have a very special entry into this series, which is Trans Wizard Harriet Porber and the Bad Boy Parasaurolophus by Chuck Tingle. Here's the thing, I know basically nothing about this very short adult romance book, besides it's written by Chuck Tingle, who I've never read before, but know from some group chats is ridiculous, and obviously this is a big fuck you to J.K. Turfling. I laughed so hard when I found the cover of this book and immediately put it on my wish list and told my roommates that if I am meant to read it and do a video for this channel, somebody will buy it for me. And then my partner bought it for me, so this is happening. I usually go into my books knowing as little as possible, but since the synopsis is on the back of the book, which is the correct way to do it, I'm going to read that for you so you can decide whether or not you need to nope out. Trans Wizard Harriet Porber is a master spellsmith who's found herself in a bit of a pickle. After finishing wizard college, Harriet made a name for herself by creating a hit viral spell, but has since failed to craft a follow-up. Now Harriet's agent, Minerva, is breathing down her neck, suggesting that Harriet take a trip to an island off the coast of England for inspiration. Hoping for some peace and quiet to clear her head, Harriet Porber arrives to find that her new neighbor, an angsty bard named Shabe, from the band 7 Inch Nails, is already there making a racket. This Parasaurolophus spellcaster is a bad boy through and through, and with his incredible powers and meta magic, Shabe reveals that this layer of reality is much more than it seems. Could Harriet and Shabe really be characters in a parody romance novel? Oh my god, I love it, and there's more. Soon enough, these two are discovering that they have more similarities than differences. Both trans, both strong, and both hoping to create a new spell that will change the world. But with the addition of two devious sentient motorcycles to the mix, Dellatrix and Braco, things start to get a little complicated. Now Trans Wizard Harriet Porber is caught up in a tale of magic and mystery where nothing is as it seems except for one universal truth. Love is real. I didn't think I was going to get even more excited to start this, and then I read the synopsis. Also, can we just talk about this cover for a minute? Obviously, I love her look. We've got our bad boy all shirtless, which is what you want on the cover of your romance novels. And then just to throw home that the motorcycle is sentient, it's got a head for some reason. And I'm looking forward to this mammoth showing up. I have a feeling that it is probably her agent. So let's get down to it. I have coffee in my beautiful Powell's mug, which is really appropriate for today because it is rainy and disgusting outside. And then for snack, I have homemade hummus and mini cucumbers, which are looking more and more phallic as I think about reading this book. I'll stop stalling and get right into the novel. And unlike previous books in this series, this doesn't have 100 chapters, which is great because that was getting annoying in my other series. This one only has about 15 or 16, so you'll get about that many updates and then my final thoughts at the end. But first, I'm going into One Hit Wonder, Chapter 1. Alright, that's the first chapter down, and I was wrong. Minerva is not the woolly mammoth looking creature on the front of this, just a normal human, so we'll figure out how that plays later. So Harriet lives in Brooklyn and had the biggest selling spell 3 years ago and doesn't seem to realize it was so long ago. And when Minerva shows up at her apartment, she's like, you know, we got that new head wizard, Hank. He's all like, we're gonna have to start cutting some people, and I'm worried that if you don't have an interesting spell soon, he's going to cut you. So like, you're gonna have to figure it out. And she's like, well, I've been staring out this window for like 3 weeks trying to come up with something I'm excited about. And Minerva's like, well, maybe you just need a change of scenery. And when Harriet looks out the window and knows the next 3 people that are going to get off the bus because it's Tuesday and she just knows, she's like, yeah, I think I will do that. So she's off to an island that is definitely fictional off the coast of England, which just makes me think of how I still want to go to Shetland and the Orkney Islands. Like, I still need that to happen. Those are off the coast of Scotland, but yeah. So we're gonna go into the second chapter, which is called Dellatrix and Braco. And yeah, see how that goes. So chapter 2 starts out with Harriet on the ferry to Portork Island, which is one of the Tingler Islands, which I didn't realize the first time I read it that it's definitely just Chuck Tingle islands. However, this chapter did a really good job of pointing out how meta-theatrical it's going to be. On the ferry, we meet Dellatrix and Braco, who are sentient motorcycles, and they're right on the edge of whether or not they're like nice or being backhandedly mean to Harriet, and she doesn't really know how to feel about them. She eventually gets to the island after they've been jackasses for a little bit, and she gets to her cabin and she's laid everything out. She's so ready to start creating her newest spell, and then there's just hugely loud noise, and she looks outside and sees the sentient motorcycle's sports car, because apparently they need a sports car even though they're sentient motorcycles. And she's like, holy crap, how is it possible that these tourists are staying right next to where I'm staying and that they're this loud? So she goes to the cabin, she knocks on the door. Obviously nobody hears her because loud noises, but eventually she gets somebody to answer the door, and it's not Dellatrix and it's not Braco, it is Snabe, who, just to remind you, looks like this. He looks exactly like this when he answers the door. So yeah, he's distractingly hot, but she's like, hey, could you not? Because I'm here for some peace and quiet. And he's like, no. And she's like, why not? And he's like, well, this is the part of the story where I'm supposed to be an asshole to you, so later when we fall in love, it's gonna be great. And like, I love how meta this is. Like, he knows that he's in a bad boy romance because he is a bard, and bards use meta magic, which is just wonderful. There was also a mention that bards use meta magic, wizards have to use their wands to cast magic, whereas warlocks can just like say words and have magic happen because they are speaking to an omnipresent author named Chuck, which made me laugh really hard. Also, we got the trope of Dellatrix showing up in the background wearing one of Snape's like t-shirts and like being all sexy even though she's a motorcycle, and basically slamming the door on Harriet. So now she's gone back to her cabin to call the local sheriff to get them to shut the fuck up. On to Slashed, Chapter 3. So in Chapter 3, Harriet goes into town to get some lunch, and here's some anecdotal evidence that Snape isn't a completely terrible person, so she like feels weird about that. And when she gets out of her lunch, somebody has slashed all 4 of her tires on her rental car, and of course like the guy that repairs those types of things is off island today, so she leaves the car there with the hostess, who is really nice at this restaurant, and has to walk back, which literally takes hours, and Dellatrix and Braco like drive by and laugh at her on the way. So when she gets home, she's just like exhausted and just wants to go and like either spell write or sleep, and then she hears music playing, and there's not supposed to be music playing because earlier the sheriff showed up and like came to a compromise. The sheriff, by the way, being a unicorn, which was delightful. So she goes down to the dock, and Snape is playing like beautiful acoustic guitar, but because she's so cranky and upset, she like throws it in the ocean. But he just like walks on his giant yacht and gets another one because he's super rich. And I actually love the meta theatricalism in this one, because there's this one bit where she's just like, how rich are you? And he's like, pretty rich. I didn't earn it though. I was written into incredible wealth by Chuck Tingle, the author. You really can't just be a bad boy like this. You've got to be a billionaire bad boy. It's kind of toxic, actually. I love meta theatricalism, and I love that that is a part of this book because I am so into it. He also asks her out, and of course she says no because she's got a spell to write, and of course she's eventually gonna say yes because that's just how these things go. Next we're on to What You Need When You Need It, Chapter 4. Chapter 4 starts with Harriet being woken up by Minerva, and she's like, it's 3 hours earlier here, why would you do this to me? Which is a huge inconsistency with our world, so I'm guessing that in this world the sun goes from west to east. It would also be more than 3 hours. I think it's actually 4 hours in our world. Whatever, it's fine. Anyway, Minerva is like, hey, you written anything yet? And she's like, I've been here for a day, and like the neighbor's loud. And Minerva's like, wait, is Snape there? And she's like, you know Snape? And apparently they grew up together, like this was their summer home. That's why Minerva has this house. And Snape's family had the summer home next door, and they were friends growing up. And this is when Harriet finds out that Snape is also trans, because apparently it's a lot in his lyrics. It's not like Minerva's outing him or anything like that, and she just never paid attention to the lyrics before. Harriet tells Minerva that Snape asked her out and she turned him down, and Minerva's like, well, actually, if you're looking for inspiration, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And then Bellatrix shows up drunk, like still up for the night type of thing. Drunk on chocolate milk, by the way, because apparently that's what they drink to get drunk in this world. And it's basically like, stay away from Snape, Snape is mine. And Harriet's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna accept that date now because it'll piss you off. And I'm kind of intrigued. Also, she goes out and finds him chopping wood and is just like, do you ever wear a shirt? At this point, Snape has never worn a shirt in this book. So they're going out for dinner tonight, and she's going to give him some tips on how to start spellcasting again, because apparently all the songs he's been working on haven't been going anywhere. So they're gonna talk shop. It's gonna be cute, probably. It's probably also gonna have some form of annoyance. I wonder where they're gonna go, because there's like 2 restaurants on the island. She's already been to the one that's really a restaurant, the other one's more like a cafe. Now we're on to Snape's lesson, chapter 5. Chapter 5 is their date, and they go to the same restaurant that Harriet went to the previous day, but it's like busy now because of the dinner rush. For once, Snape is wearing a shirt. He's in like a nicely fitted suit, because of course he is. That's what bad boy billionaires do. And in this scene, there's some guys that have had too much chocolate milk and are just drunk and being really mean to Gobby, who's the waitress that we met before. So Snape punches them out, because obviously that's what happens when you have a bad boy character. Harriet and Snape talk a little over dinner, and she's like, look, I know that you're dating Dellatrix and Braco, and no offense, but that's just not my scene. I don't want to be one of many people you date. I've tried that before. It's just not for me. And he's like, what if I sent the motorcycles home tomorrow? And she's like, I know you won't do that. And he's like, yeah, we're not even halfway through the story. That would be too easy. I can't do that. And then Braco shows up and is like, you gotta come quick. Dellatrix is in the hospital. On to Meeting in the Woods, chapter 6. So chapter 6 has a couple of different components. Firstly, we get to the hospital and we find out that Dellatrix is going to be fine. She just kind of fell off the pier and Braco had to save her. And you know that it's all basically just a setup that they put together so that Snape would feel bad for not being there. It's one of those type of things, like with the whole like they hug and Dellatrix like winks at Harriet behind the back and that whole trope. And that in itself was a lot of fun. And then we have a few days later when Harriet hasn't seen anybody from that cabin for a while and she's gone through a walk up the hill just kind of to get some more inspiration, to get out of her head, that type of thing. And Snape follows behind and is like, I actually did some work on that track we were talking about, and here's a thumb drive with it, and I just wanted to thank you. And she reasserts that she doesn't want to be part of his motorcycle harem, but all of a sudden lust just overtakes her, and they have a lot of sex in the woods. What I particularly liked about it is they were very open with how they wanted their bodies to be used and how they wanted their bodies to be referred to, and they used magic at one point, which I found really amusing. And once they come back down the hill from that and go their separate ways, she starts writing again and she listens to his song, and it's just beautiful. I love this particular bit of meta-theatricalism because it's talking about how characters are separate from the realities they're written into, which is definitely the parallel of you can love Harry Potter. That is fine if you love Harry Potter, but you should be critical of J.K. Turfling for being a huge fucking turf. Suddenly from this she's got the inspiration to really start on her spell, and she just writes it all out, like 15,000 words out of nowhere, which is enough to send to Minerva. And as soon as she says it's okay, Harry can start putting it on a scroll so that they can start selling it. So that's good. We've gotten to the part where she's really got her inspiration. She's finally getting her spell together. Unfortunately, the next chapter is Stolen Spells, chapter 7. In 7, Harriet wakes up in the middle of the night thinking she hears somebody in her cabin, but when she checks, she doesn't see anybody, so she goes back to sleep. In the morning, she decides to go for a little walk before she starts spellcast writing, and on her walk, she finds Snape, who is pissed off because he's only given one copy of his song to anyone, that's her, and now it's all over the wizarding blog, so he thinks that she leaked it. They obviously fight about this, and he says that she's blaming it on Dellatrix because she is jealous, so they decide to never talk again. And then she finds this ore kind of stuck into the woods that is definitely what was used to make Dellatrix have to go to the hospital. And she's like, well, I could bring this to Snape and show him that Dellatrix is terrible, but I don't care. And she just throws it in the ocean, and it's gonna like drift off into the ocean. In this chapter, Harriet also likens Snape to sea glass, the kind that's been in the ocean for a while but hasn't gotten all of the edges rubbed off and is obnoxiously brittle, and I loved it. On to the next chapter, which is Harriet Metamalium, chapter 8. This is the grand gesture makeup chapter, so she goes for dinner like she usually does on Friday, and the whole place is cleared out, and he plays his song, and it's beautiful, and he talks about how he screwed up, and he knows that Dellatrix was the one that was a douchebag, and all of those things. But before all that, she hasn't seen him for weeks. She actually left the cabin that she was staying in for free and was like at a different place paying money to be there, just hoping to get her spell done, but she just couldn't seem to do it. And there's this whole talk about whether or not artists have to be tortured and that whole trope, and it's really more so that they need to be by each other. That's how they were vibing off each other and getting all this energy, which I really appreciated. I also really like this one section where he's talking about the spell and how it's not quite perfect yet because it's almost done. It's very close. It's affecting the characters in the book, but I want it to do more than that. I want the reader to know they're beautiful and strong and important in whatever body they inhabit. And I love that because it definitely also talks about how you can take a character and put it in a different body, be it a rock star or a teacher or a dinosaur, and it can be the same character at its core, which is just lovely, and you know, obviously metaphors for being trans and all of those things. So knowing that Dellatrix and Braco have been kicked out, they go back to his place because he wants her to record backing vocals on a track, and to get her comfortable enough to do that, they both get naked, and then obviously after she's done an amazing job on her first take of doing the backing vocals, they have more of the sex. Now we're on to Crash, which is chapter 9. This chapter is a time jump where they've spent weeks together being really happy and creating and just putting to bed the whole thing that you need to be like tortured to create stuff and that type of thing. And of course that all has to change. They wake up one morning and there's like a dead creature on the front step, and they're like, this is gross, who could have done this? And obviously they think Dellatrix, but she's not on the island anymore, so it couldn't have been her. And then they go for dinner that night, and the brakes have been cut on his car, as well as the passenger side airbag has been deactivated, so when they crash, because they're going down a really big hill, she almost dies. So they have to tell the sheriff, they have to get a doctor. Basically they're supposed to keep this quiet because it makes it harder for the police to investigate if they like tell people, not to mention like they're both famous. One's a very famous bard in a very famous band of just himself, and then one is a spellcaster, so it's just easier if they don't tell anyone, and hopefully they will find out who did it. Also, the mammoth has finally been mentioned and should show up in the next chapter, and is apparently Snape's bodyguard from back when he was touring, so we're gonna meet the mammoth soon. On to An Old Friend, chapter 10. So Bumbleborn, the mammoth, arrives so that he can take care of Harriet while Snape goes off to be in his first concert in like 6 years. And one of the first things he says is, "I'm gay," and Harriet's like, what? And he's like, "I just wanted to say that clearly in this story instead of claiming years later that it was in subtext the whole time." Yes! Obviously, huge fan. At this point, Harriet's having like a little bit of trepidation about what their future is going to be, because if Snape is touring again, he's going to feel like he needs to have chocolate milk again, and maybe he'll slip back into his bad boy tendencies, and she's scared what that could possibly mean. Also, it's scary to think about going outside of this beautiful artistic bubble they've created so that she can like tour with him. Even though that sounds exciting, is that something she actually wants to do? On to Tonight's the Night, chapter 11. So in this chapter, Snape has gone away to go to his concert, which hasn't happened yet, and Harry decides to go for a little walk with Bumbleborn, and finds basically a creepy message being like, tonight's the night, and she's pretty sure that, you know, Dellatrix is back on the island and it's gonna harm them. However, I think I know how this is going to go, because we know that Braco is still on the island, and because we know that like hitting yourself in the face with an oar is like really hard to do even if you're drunk. I think that Braco's been the evil one the whole time. And I'm pretty sure that's going to be accurate, because Braco is taking the yacht to go to see the concert in Dublin, and they're gonna go on the yacht with Braco to go see the concert and to like get away from the cabin because Dellatrix is there and going to murder them type of thing. So I'm pretty sure that Braco is going to try to murder them on the yacht, but we'll find out in Words on Water, chapter 12. So I was wrong, Dellatrix is definitely the evil one, but what happened is Dellatrix basically told Braco, hey, I'm gonna sneak onto the boat and we're gonna like scare her, but I promise not to hurt her or whatever, and obviously that's a lie. She just wanted to kill her because like she's been obsessed with Snape for like years before they even met, and she's deranged. So basically she knocks out Bumbleborn, and I thought he was dead at first, but he wasn't, which is good. and then basically big fight on boat. A spell that Harriet's been working on this whole time is a fate spell, and if you remember back to when she threw that oar in the water, basically that ends up saving her life. You'd have to read the book to kind of figure out why, but basically that's how it is. And all of this magic is going on over the boat, so the Irish Coast Guard has basically shown up being like, what is happening? Because at this point, Dellatrix has gone over the edge in the fight. She's drowning because she's a motorcycle. She can't float. And then Braco is knocked out at this point. I think that Bumbleborn is just waking up, and the Irish Coast Guard is basically like, what's happening? So the second to last chapter is Sexual Healing, which is chapter 13. I mean, I'm sure you can guess what happened in this chapter with a title like Sexual Healing. Obviously they did it. They made it to a hospital. Bumbleborn is gonna be fine, but he basically kicks him out of his room because he needs his rest, and they go and do it in an abandoned room, and then like a doctor comes in at the end and is like, what are you doing here? And they're like, you know what we're doing. It's a pretty humorous scene. I enjoyed it. There's only a couple of pages left, and the last chapter is Billings, chapter 14. So the last chapter ends how romance novels tend to end, which is they're at a concert at a random venue, and he pulls her out on stage to sing their song together, and then he proposes, and her whole family is there at this random town, Billings, Montana, which is funny because that's apparently where Chuck Tingle is from. So I like that he threw that in there. Of course, that's how it's going to end. It's a romance novel. They end in very predictable ways. Usually people getting married, always happily, or, you know, people getting engaged, whatever. That's fine. So I kind of figured that's how it was going to go, but I like that he threw his own hometown in there because why not? I thought this was going to be a really silly book. I thought this was basically just going to be like a I'm basically just kind of getting away with using these characters because I've changed their names or whatever. But it's actually really good. Like, it's got a great concept on its own, and then you just toss in these characters that happen to be similarly named to a certain series, and then it's even better because there are so many fingers to stupid things that a certain different author has done. So there's that. I highly suggest this one if you can pick it up. It is pretty funny. Now I'm gonna have to read more Chuck Tingle. I'm a little scared, but I'm also a little bit excited. Also, it's gotten so late in the evening that it's dark out and I switched to red wine. If you've read any Chuck Tingle, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you're on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I recently set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that is down below, as well as the link to my PayPal or my Amazon wishlist, in case you would like to buy me a book that I will probably then read in one of these videos. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!